Do you ever feel like the promises made to veterans are written in sand, constantly shifting with the political tides? It's a serious concern, and right now there is a clock ticking down on some of the most valuable benefits earned through your service, benefits that could be drastically altered, capped, or even retired completely by the year 2026. This isn't fear-mongering. This is a legislative reality. The financial landscape, budgetary constraints, and sunset clauses attached to recent acts mean that the window to lock in your maximum entitlement under the current rules is closing fast. We're talking about securing your financial future, your healthcare stability, and your family safety net before Congress, or the VA, begins to redraw the lines. If you wait, you risk losing access to the best versions of these benefits forever. We've identified 7 critical veteran benefits you need to lock in immediately, detailing exactly why the 2026 deadline matters for each one and the specific steps you must take right now to secure your position. The very first and arguably the most foundational benefit that every veteran must prioritize locking in is SHOT, VA disability compensation. This is not just a monthly payment. It is the cornerstone upon which so many other benefits are built. Your service connection rating dictates eligibility for enhanced health care, specific employment programs, property tax exemptions, and even survivor benefits. Locking in your rating now is paramount because the process is currently based on established criteria. But there are continuous discussions, particularly concerning the proposed modernization of the VA schedule for rating disabilities, VASRD, which could fundamentally change how certain conditions are evaluated, potentially leading to lower ratings for new applicants in the future. The current system, codified in Title 38 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 4, provides a detailed, if sometimes complex, roadmap for translating medical conditions into percentage ratings. However, the push towards utilizing modern medical technology and diagnostic criteria means that conditions previously rated highly based on subjective criteria might face stricter, objective measurements, potentially reducing the overall compensation level for future claims. This is why establishing your service connection and securing your percentage rating under the current, more established rules is a critical defensive measure against future legislative or regulatory shifts. To truly understand the urgency here, consider the complexity of the rating process itself, which necessitates a deep dive into the evidence requirements. When you file a claim for disability compensation, the VA requires 3 main components: an in-service event, injury, or illness, a current diagnosed disability, and a medical nexus, which is the link connecting the current disability to the in-service event. For veterans who served decades ago, gathering the necessary evidence, especially the nexus, becomes increasingly difficult over time as medical records are lost or memories fade. The 2026 deadline is significant because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to bridge that historical gap. Furthermore, the introduction of presumptive conditions, while helpful, often comes with specific time frames. If these presumptive periods are reviewed or narrowed in future legislation, veterans who haven't filed might find themselves needing to prove a direct connection that is currently presumed. For example, a veteran with a knee injury sustained during active duty might currently receive a certain percentage based on range of motion and pain. If the VASRD is updated to emphasize purely objective measurements like imaging results, the subjective element of pain, which often drives higher ratings, could be de-emphasized. Locking in your rating now ensures that your compensation is calculated under the current, more favorable interpretations. The application process itself, the VA Form 21-526EZ, is deceptively simple, yet the success hinges entirely on the quality and completeness of the supporting documentation. We are talking about the difference between a successful claim in 6 months and a multi-year battle through the appeals process. To lock in this benefit effectively before 2026, you must ensure your medical records are complete. This often requires obtaining private medical records that the VA does not automatically possess detailed lay statements from friends, family, or fellow service members who witnessed the injury or illness, and crucially, a strong independent medical opinion, IMO, or nexus letter from a private physician. Relying solely on the VA's compensation and pension (C&P) exam is a common mistake, as these exams are primarily designed to gather information for the VA, not necessarily to advocate for the veteran. A well-written nexus letter specifically cites the veteran's service records and current medical findings, explicitly stating that the condition is, at least as likely as not, due to military service. The cost and effort of obtaining this external documentation are negligible compared to the lifetime value of tax-free disability compensation. Veterans must initiate this evidence-gathering process now, recognizing that securing a high rating, say 70% or higher, opens doors to total disability based on individual unemployability, TDIU, commissary privileges, and other state-level benefits that might also face future legislative scrutiny. The key takeaway here is simple. If you have a service-connected condition, file the claim, gather the evidence meticulously, and lock in that percentage rating before. The potential structural overhaul of the VASRD takes effect, securing not just the compensation itself, but the gateway to dozens of other related privileges. The urgency is amplified by the sheer volume of claims currently being processed, driven by the PACT Act. As the VA's resources become increasingly strained, processing times increase, meaning that starting your claim today is the only way to ensure it is adjudicated under the current favorable regulations. Moving swiftly to the second critical benefit, the CHAI, VAB Home Loan Guarantee. This is a financial tool of immense power, and its structure is potentially vulnerable to changes driven by the volatile housing market and increasing legislative pressure on federal guarantees. The VA loan, famous for requiring zero down payment, is far more complex than just that single feature. It guarantees a portion of the loan to the lender, reducing risk and allowing veterans to access highly competitive interest rates without the burden of private mortgage insurance, PMI, a cost that can add hundreds of dollars monthly to a conventional mortgage payment. The 2026 concern centers primarily on two areas: the funding fee structure and the potential for a cap on entitlement limits, particularly for high-cost housing areas. While currently the entitlement limit is essentially eliminated for veterans with full entitlement, allowing them to purchase homes up to any reasonable limit without a down payment, this freedom is a prime target for budgetary review, especially if the housing market sees a significant downturn that increases the VA's exposure to defaults. The funding fee is a percentage of the loan amount paid directly to the VA to offset the cost of the program to taxpayers. This fee varies based on service history, disability status, and whether the veteran has used the loan before. Crucially, veterans with a service-connected disability rating are entirely exempt from paying this funding fee, which can save thousands of dollars up front. Locking in your disability rating now, as discussed in Benefit 1, is the prerequisite for this exemption. If you wait to file your disability claim until after the loan is closed, you pay the fee, and while you can often get a refund once the rating is approved, the administrative headache and the temporary loss of capital are significant. Furthermore, if legislative changes tighten the definition of service-connected for funding fee exemption purposes, or if the fee structure itself is raised across the board to generate more revenue for the government, veterans who delay purchasing a home will pay a higher price. The current funding fee structure is relatively stable, but any comprehensive budget review post-2025 could see these percentages increase dramatically, especially for subsequent users of the benefit. Another crucial element to secure is the ability to use the VA Interest Rate Reduction Refinance Loan, IRRP, IRRL, often called the Streamline Refinance. This tool allows veterans to quickly and efficiently refinance an existing VA loan, often without an appraisal or extensive credit checks, when interest rates drop. Given the recent volatility in the mortgage market, securing a VA loan now, even if rates are high, ensures that you have the immediate ability to utilize the IRRL when rates inevitably fall again. If legislative changes introduce stricter underwriting requirements for the IRRL, perhaps requiring a full appraisal or higher credit scores, the ease and affordability of this crucial refinancing tool could vanish. Locking in your primary VA loan usage now secures your access to the current, highly flexible IRRL guidelines. Veterans need to start the pre-approval process immediately, even if they aren't ready to buy, to understand their entitlement and address any potential credit issues that could delay closing. The VA loan is a lifetime benefit, but the terms and conditions under which it is offered are highly susceptible to economic pressures. Securing your purchase or refinancing under the current favorable terms before 2026 is a strategic financial move that protects you from potential legislative tightening of lending standards or increased costs associated with the guarantee. The third benefit demanding immediate attention is the post-9/11 GI Bill education benefits. Chapter 33. While the Forever GI Bill removed the 15-year expiration date for those who left service on or after January 1, 2013, the benefit structure itself, specifically the monthly housing allowance, MHA, and the tuition cap, is continuously under review and subject to legislative adjustment based on educational costs and budgetary concerns. The primary urgency here relates to transferability and the potential for MHA recalculations. For service members still on active duty, the ability to transfer the GI Bill to dependents, spouse or children, requires meeting specific service obligations, often necessitating a 4-year commitment at the time of transfer election. If you are nearing the end of your commitment or are considering separating, locking in the transferability now is paramount. Future changes in military retention policies or budget constraints could make the transferability option significantly harder to obtain, potentially requiring longer service commitments or limiting the number of credits that can be transferred. If you wait, you might find that the opportunity to provide your children with tax-free education funding has evaporated. Beyond transferability, the financial component, the MHA, is a massive concern. The MHA is tied to the Basic Housing Allowance, BAH, rate for an E5 with dependents at the school's location. While this linkage provides stability, there are ongoing debates about whether the MHA calculation should be capped or decoupled entirely from BAH, especially in high-cost areas where the MHA payment is substantial. If Congress decides to cap MHA payments or adjust the calculation methodology to save costs, future students will receive less support for living expenses. Locking in your enrollment and usage now or ensuring your dependents are registered and utilizing the benefit secures the MHA calculation based on the current, more generous formula. Furthermore, the maximum tuition coverage for private and foreign schools, which is adjusted annually, is always at risk of being frozen or reduced in budget-conscious years. Veterans pursuing high-cost private education need to utilize the benefit now, locking in the current high coverage rate and ensuring access to the Yellow Ribbon program, which allows schools to voluntarily cover costs exceeding the VA's cap. The Yellow Ribbon program participation by schools can also fluctuate, so securing enrollment now ensures you benefit from the current agreements. We must also consider the potential for changes in the criteria for technical and vocational training. The GI Bill is highly flexible, covering everything from traditional 4-year degrees to flight school and vocational certificates. However, as the focus shifts towards specific high-demand fields, Future legislation might restrict the types of educational programs covered or impose stricter standards on non-traditional learning institutions. If you plan to pursue a specialized certificate or vocational training, securing your enrollment and utilization before 2026 protects you from potential future restrictions on course coverage. The post-9/11 GI Bill is a massive investment in human capital, and its current structure is arguably the most favorable it has ever been. Delaying the decision to use it or to transfer it risks encountering a more restrictive, less financially generous version of the benefit in the near future. Start the application for your Certificate of Eligibility, COE, today, even if you are months away from starting school. This action establishes your intent and locks in your entitlement based on the current rules. The fourth benefit requiring immediate action is VA healthcare enrollment. This is not merely about access to doctors. It is about securing access to specialized, comprehensive care that often exceeds what private insurance offers, particularly in areas like mental health, prosthetics, and polytrauma rehabilitation. The urgency surrounding VA healthcare enrollment is directly tied to the priority group system, specifically the vulnerability of lower priority groups to future means testing or outright closure. The VA assigns veterans to one of 8 priority groups based on factors like service-connected disability status, income, and exposure history. Priority groups 1 through 6 generally enjoy stable enrollment and minimal or no co-pays. However, veterans in Priority Group 7, and especially Priority Group 8, whose eligibility is often purely income-based and who are not service-connected for a high percentage, are the most susceptible to legislative changes. If Congress faces budgetary pressures, the easiest target for cost savings is often to tighten the income thresholds for Priority Groups 7 and 8, or to freeze enrollment for Priority Group 8 entirely. This has happened before, and there is no guarantee it won't happen again. Locking in your VA healthcare enrollment now, even if you have excellent private insurance, creates a historical record of usage and enrollment that makes it significantly harder for the VA to disenroll you later, should the criteria change. Enrollment secures your access to preventative services, mental health care, and specialized clinics that can be difficult or expensive to access elsewhere. Furthermore, enrollment is the necessary precursor for receiving care related to presumptive conditions under acts like the PACT Act. If you delay enrollment and future legislation introduces stricter verification requirements for presumptive exposure claims, you might find yourself facing bureaucratic hurdles to access the care you need. Beyond the priority groups, securing enrollment is vital for accessing specific, high-value ancillary benefits. For example, comprehensive mental health services are available through the VA regardless of your income or disability rating for certain periods post-separation. But this access is streamlined through the enrollment process. Similarly, access to specialized programs like the caregiver support program or certain dental care benefits, which are highly restricted, often requires established VA healthcare enrollment. If you are a veteran who falls into Priority Group 8 based on current income limits, your window to enroll might be the most precarious. You must file the VA Form 1010EZ immediately. Do not wait until you need care. Enrollment is a proactive measure. It is an insurance policy against future legislative tightening of eligibility standards. By locking in your enrollment status now, you secure your place in the system, guaranteeing access to a robust, albeit sometimes complex, healthcare network that is designed specifically for the unique health challenges faced by the veteran population. The fifth critical benefit that veterans need to lock in now, particularly for the sake of their families, is dependency and indemnity compensation, DIC. This benefit, provides tax-free monetary compensation to surviving spouses, dependent children, and sometimes parents of veterans whose death was due to a service-connected disability or occurred while on active duty. The urgency here is twofold: the potential for legislative changes to the payment formula and the risk of delaying the service connection claim that establishes eligibility. To receive DIC, the veteran's death must be directly service-connected, or the veteran must have been totally disabled, 100% scheduler or TDIU, for a specific period before death, usually 10 years. The 2026 horizon brings concern because the payment rates and the eligibility criteria are constantly subject to congressional review. Currently, the payment structure includes a basic rate plus various add-ons, like the 8-year rule add-on or the housebound rate, which provide a substantial safety net for surviving families. Any future budget cuts could target these add-ons or potentially introduce means testing for the surviving spouse, which is currently not a factor. To lock in the maximum possible DIC benefit for your family, the veteran must ensure that their disability rating is 100% and that this rating is established for the required look-back period. If a veteran with a severe service-connected condition delays filing for a 100% rating and subsequently passes away, the surviving spouse might face an uphill battle proving the necessary 100% status for the required duration, complicating the DIC claim. Therefore, the veteran securing the highest possible disability rating now is a direct investment in the financial security of their surviving family. Furthermore, there is ongoing legislative discussion regarding modernizing the DIC formula to align it more closely with military survivor benefits, like the Survivor Benefit Plan, SBP. While this could potentially increase benefits for some, it introduces uncertainty and could also lead to complex offsets or reductions for others. Locking in eligibility under the current, established rules provides certainty. For surviving spouses, the immediate action required is to ensure that the veteran's medical records clearly link the cause of death to their service-connected conditions. If the veteran is still alive but seriously ill, the family should proactively gather evidence, including private physician statements, that establish the causal link between the service-connected condition and the prognosis. This preparation dramatically speeds up the DIC claim process and minimizes the risk of denial based on insufficient evidence. DIC is the ultimate safety net, and its current structure is robust. Delaying the foundational steps necessary to secure this benefit for your loved ones is a gamble you cannot afford to take, especially as legislative changes loom on the horizon. The sixth benefit, which is perhaps the most time-sensitive and urgent due to its recent enactment, involves filing claims under HOPROP. The PACT Act Presumptive Conditions. The Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, honoring our promise to address Comprehensive Toxics Act, or PACT Act, significantly expanded VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. The urgency here is not tied to a legislative sunset clause in the traditional sense, but rather to the retroactive pay component and the potential for future regulatory tightening of the presumptive definition. The PACT Act established a one-year window from its enactment, August 10, 2022, for veterans to file claims and receive retroactive benefits back to the date the law was signed. While that initial window has passed, the urgency remains because the VA is currently operating under a highly favorable and expansive interpretation of presumptive service connection for over 20 new conditions related to toxic exposure. The VA has explicitly stated that if a veteran served in a specific location during a specific time frame, EBIG, Iraq or Afghanistan, after 1990 for burn pits, and develops one of the listed presumptive conditions, like certain cancers, hypertension, or asthma, the VA presumes the service connection. This presumption is a massive relief, eliminating the need for the veteran to provide a complex nexus letter linking their current disease to the toxic exposure. However, the expansive nature of this presumption is expensive for the government, and historical precedent suggests that, over time, the VA may be pressured to tighten the regulatory definitions or require more specific evidence of exposure if the sheer volume of claims becomes unsustainable. Locking in your PACT Act claim now establishes your place in the system under the most favorable, broad interpretation of the law. If you wait until 2026, you risk facing a regulatory environment where the VA requires more stringent proof or documentation than is currently demanded. Furthermore, securing your PACT Act claim immediately ensures that the effective date of your benefit is maximized. While retroactive pay to the law's enactment date is generally only available for those who filed within the first year, filing now ensures your effective date is the date the VA received your claim or the date of your diagnosis, whichever is earlier, potentially maximizing your back pay. Veterans need to specifically look at the list of presumptive conditions, which includes cancers of the head, neck, respiratory system, and specific respiratory illnesses like constrictive bronchiolitis, and file an intent to file ITF immediately if they have any of these diagnoses. The ITF protects your effective date for up to 1 year while you gather the necessary medical evidence. Do not delay this step. The PACT Act represents a historic opportunity for veterans exposed to toxins, but the current, highly accessible criteria are not guaranteed to last indefinitely, making this one of the most time-sensitive benefits on our list to lock in before potential regulatory changes take hold. The sheer volume of evidence being processed means that starting the process now is the only way to get ahead of the inevitable backlog and ensure your claim is adjudicated while the current presumptive definitions are fully in force. The seventh, and often severely underutilized, benefit to lock in before potential structural changes is vocational rehabilitation and employment, VR&E, also known as Chapter 31. This benefit is a career accelerator designed to help veterans with service-connected disabilities, typically a 10% rating or higher, overcome barriers to employment. The urgency surrounding VR&E stems from its direct connection to the disability rating system and the potential for future restrictions on the program's scope and subsistence allowance. Eligibility for VR&E is determined by a VA counselor who assesses the veteran's employment handicap. If the disability rating system changes post-2026, as discussed in Benefit 1, veterans who delay filing for their initial disability rating might find themselves ineligible for VR&E if their new rating falls below the necessary threshold, or if the criteria for defining an employment handicap are tightened. VR&E offers 5 tracks including reemployment, rapid access to employment, self-employment, and independent living. The self-employment track in particular is an incredibly valuable resource, providing funding, training, and equipment to help disabled veterans start their own businesses. The scope and funding for this track are highly susceptible to budgetary review. If the VA decides to limit the types of businesses funded or impose stricter financial caps on startup costs, veterans who delay their application might miss out on this crucial entrepreneurial support. Locking in your VR&E application now secures your place under the current, more expansive interpretation of the program's utility. Crucially, VR&E provides a subsistence allowance that is often significantly higher than the monthly housing allowance, MHA, offered by the GI Bill, especially for veterans with higher disability ratings and dependents. This allowance is designed to cover living expenses while the veteran is in training or school. If legislative changes cap or reduce the subsistence allowance, tying it more strictly to the MHA or introducing means testing, the financial attractiveness of VR&E will diminish. By applying and being accepted into the VR&E program now, you lock in access to the current, more generous subsistence allowance formula. The application process, which involves VA Form 288832, requires a consultation with a VR&E counselor. Veterans should initiate this consultation immediately, not just to secure the benefit, but to establish their employment handicap under the current favorable criteria. VR&E is a comprehensive program that provides tuition, books, supplies, and technology, making it an invaluable tool for career transition. Do not let potential future restrictions on disability ratings or program funding prevent you from accessing this transformative benefit. To summarize these 7 crucial benefits, the underlying theme is one of proactive defense. The year 2026 is not an arbitrary date. It represents a common legislative horizon where budget authorizations expire, congressional committees review program efficacy, and new administrations potentially seek to implement cost-saving measures. VA disability compensation is the foundation. Lock in your rating now before the VASRD potentially changes. The VA Home Loan Guarantee is a massive financial tool. Secure your entitlement and your funding fee exemption now before lending standards tighten or fees increase. The post-9/11 GI Bill transferability and MHA are vulnerable. Ensure your transfer is finalized or your usage is initiated before potential caps are introduced. VA healthcare enrollment, especially for lower priority groups, must be locked in now to prevent disenrollment due to future means testing. Dependency and indemnity compensation for your family hinges on your current disability rating. Maximize that rating immediately. The PACT Act presumptive conditions are currently operating under the most favorable definitions. File your claim now before regulatory requirements tighten. Finally, vocational rehabilitation and employment offers unparalleled career support. Secure your eligibility and the generous subsistence allowance before potential restrictions are imposed on disability thresholds or program scope. Your military service earned these benefits. They are not handouts, they are deferred compensation. The responsibility now falls to you to be vigilant and aggressive in securing them under the most favorable terms currently available. The time for deliberation is over. The time for action is now. Do not let the sands of legislative change erode the security you fought to earn. Start the process today. File those intents to file and lock in your future.